and start. There we go. All right, I think Bart started the recording.
Hey, Corey. Oh, Corey, before we get started, could you just go do a sound check, please? Oh, we just lost Jenny.
Sure. Testing. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Gotcha. Welcome to the Planning Commission completion meeting on at 6 o'clock. This is an electronic meeting. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with ordinance number 20-A16, an ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. Opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting will be posted on www.albemarle.org, community calendar /calendar when available. Madam Schaefer, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Bailey? Mr. Bailey?
He's not here or not here yet.
All right. Mr. Carazana?
He was
Here.
Oh.
Here.
Mr. Keller?
Present in the
Ms.
Simeon area.
President
Present
what?
in the Simeon
Sorry, go ahead.
area of Albemarle County.
Sorry. Ms. Firehawk?
President in Howardsville, Southern Albemarle.
Mr. Randolph?
Oh, he was there, but he's popped out. So we'll let you know when he pops back in.
Okay. Mr. Bivens?
Here, please.
Ms. Moore?
Present.
Mr. Claiborne?
Present.
All right, thank you very much.
And I should let you know that Mr. Bailey has arrived too, so you can call his name. And
All right, Mr. Bailey?
And also Commissioner Randolph is here.
yes.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
You know, the problem was I had to type a note in French today. I turned the language over to French on the computer, and for some reason, and I left it that way to try to come in through Zoom, it wouldn't allow me to access the language, use the microphone. So I had to go back out, change languages, and then come back in.
Bienvenue. Madam, would you call Mr. Randolph?
Mr. Bailey?
Present.
Thank you.
Mr. Randolph, present too. Okay. Are there matters not listed on our agenda from the public this evening?
There are none.
Okay. We have nothing on our consent agenda. So then we will move to our public hearing on ZTA 2021-03, which is a public hearing on a zoning text amendment to condense and clarify bonus density provisions. May we have the staff report, madam?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Bivens. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so good evening, members of the commission. I'm Leah Brumfield, Senior Planner 2 in Zoning. This is a one-ring circus this evening. The presentation is the primary attraction. The clown car will not be making an appearance, so let us dive right in. This zoning text amendment, 2021-03 bonus densities cleanup, serves as one of the first steps for the zoning modernization work we have planned on the work program. So this particular kind of ZTA is the cleanup type we've been doing for the past couple of years. We brought a couple of these to the commission before, so it's pretty familiar at this point. We're trying to make the ordinance easier to read and understand as we prepare for our planned recodification and a larger public engagement process. So this CTA was outlined in the 2020 work program under the Zoning Modernization Initiative. We've been gaining steam in this work, and I believe on September 28th, Rebecca Ragsdale brought to you the special exceptions and waivers cleanup, which was Initiative A under the Zoning Modernization. So this particular ZTA is part one of the bonus densities cleanup initiative D. And as we work further with our housing planner, Stacy Pethia, we will bring back part two of initiative D. So this is part A, just the cleanup. Part two is going to be implementing the housing policy bonus, where we'll be incorporating strategies and new initiatives from the housing policy, including ideas that maybe we haven't thought of yet. So before we tackle the big changes, we're looking at fixes that are addressing inconsistencies and making the ordinance clearer and simpler to read. So while we, as we just mentioned, the ZTA does not actually update the housing density bonus regulations, except for in the case of inconsistencies. The ZTA is part of a larger push within the zoning modernization initiative, which reaches the county's the county's housing goals, including priorities, there we go, for affordable and workforce housing. As we're teeing up regulations for future work, we anticipate future public engagement on bonus densities to be much smoother than it would otherwise be. People will have easier time understanding the existing regulations, and therefore the discussions of changes to the regulations will be more productive. Therefore, we are saying this is towards our housing goals in the comprehensive plan and in Albemarle, the Albemarle housing policy. So the history of this real quick, August 18th, the board adopted a resolution of intent to amend bonus density regulations to eliminate repetitive text, eliminate bonuses that are already required, and consolidate and reduce inconsistencies. We're tentatively scheduled for December 15th board public hearing on this item, where we'll be bringing the commission's recommendation forward. Following anticipated adoption of the ZTA, staff will begin working on part two of initiative D, which is the actual amendment of the bonus density regulations, bringing in the affordable housing policy. As outlined specifically in strategy 1A of housing Albemarle. So a quick summary of the changes. Hopefully the staff report explained most of it, but the biggest change I think that's most visible is reformatting the regulations into tables. We're removing repetitive text from each district and moving that into section 4, so we can only actually spell out the regulations once instead of every single time. We're also creating consistency between the districts, and the changes there are requiring affordable housing used to qualify for the bonus density maintained for 10 years in all districts, as opposed to 5 in village residential, and allowing a maximum of 50% bonus in all districts total, where it was 33% increase in R15. And we're also using the same standard language for each district. There were previously minor differences in terminologies that didn't impact the regulations themselves. And then finally, also removing inconsistent or already required regulations. These two big changes were to remove the potential bonus for non-interconnected streets. So essentially a focus on subdivisions with a lot of cul-de-sac ending streets, which is not permitted per subdivision regulations. We require interconnectivity both within and to external streets. So we cannot apply that bonus. And additionally, we require street trees in the county. And so we cannot provide a bonus for providing street trees if we're already requiring it. So as we mentioned briefly, the next step will be bonus densities update part 2 with housing Albemarle policy initiatives. And then just kind of a look into the future, we're also looking at the ZTAs with setback simplification and the zoning district land uses clarification, which will also be larger, more public engagement intensive ZTAs that we're looking forward to with 2022 coming right around the corner. So this concludes staff presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So do we have questions for Ms. Jenny? Jenny, so I see Jenny's hand up, and is there anyone else at this time? And Leah, if you would, oh, that's lovely. We're going to Greece? I like that.
We are trying to end the presentation.
I like going to Greece, though. That's kind of lovely.
Well, yeah, me too. That'd be nice.
So I see Jenny, and then I think I saw Rick. Okay, so we'll go to Jenny and then Rick first, the second, thank you, and then Tim. So Jenny,
Yeah.
Rick, and then Tim.
There we go.
So in attachment B on number 5, and it may say this elsewhere, but it says adjust the maximum bonus to 150% for R15 consistency. And then it goes on to say how the other districts are 50%. So that's had me a little confused today, but when you did your presentation, you just said it would be 50% like the others. Is that?
Yeah, sorry if that was confusing in the staff report. The total bonus, sorry, the total density is 150%. The bonus is 50%. Sorry if that was confusing in the staff report. The actual ordinance is just the 50%. That's what it says. I was explaining that you can have, if you can have 10, 150% of 10 is 15. So that's the total amount you could have.
Okay, because I misunderstood that, and so I was going to ask, how is that being consistent? Because it seems like a bigger, I thought you were saying it could be 150% more than the total of the
No,
15. Okay, so I've
Yeah,
spent a
thank
lot
you
of
for
time
asking. That
trying to
was-
figure out why we would say that about that particular zoning type. So I have other questions, but I'm willing to wait. I just wanted to make sure I understood that piece because it's in our attachment and I misunderstood that when I read it.
You sure you want to wait, or you want to ask questions?
Well, I mean, I guess my other question, I just had comments. Mainly, I wanted to ask for like gross versus net density and how you're calculating those. Does the achievable increase still apply?
Sure. So the actual, the zoning ordinance doesn't deal with net versus gross. That's only in the comp plan for this particular, for bonus densities. So we're not worried about that. We're only doing the gross density.
Okay, so is there a cap for, I guess I thought for, like, for example, there's some properties in Crozet that are R6 by right. And so my understanding is when they do the calculation for that, they can take constrained land and add those units available that can't be built on the constrained land onto the buildable land. So thereby they could have like, 135 units on less than 4.5 acres, but because it's not a rezoning. So what I'm wondering is if you're making a calculation like that, and for a project that is going by right, even though we think of by right as less dense, but in this case it's R6, and then you're calculating the density that way, is there a cap on, can they then come and say we should get more because of these different things? And I understand some of those, this is saying we would remove, like street trees or things that are already required. So is there a cap when you're calculating density in that way?
So there's no cap based on the net density. It is the 50% increase. So in the R6, they could get an additional 3 units per acre maximum, regardless of anything else. And the comp plan calculations for the recommended density don't play into the bonus densities that are awarded by meeting these regulations in the zoning ordinance. They're separate regulations. So the comp plan recommendations really only come into play when we're looking at rezonings or another legislative action. Anything administrative isn't going to necessarily look at the comp plan. although staff will make recommendations if there is something that they can comment on. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I wanted to lift up, even though I guess what you're saying is the ZTA wouldn't address a scenario like that, but I think generally speaking, it's really confusing for people who live around properties to try to understand what could possibly happen there, you know, even if they're somewhat paying attention to those type of things. And then when you have a situation where you imagine 6 units an acre, but you don't imagine that, you know, that could be multiple acres in the floodplain, and then a smaller amount that they actually can build on, that it turns into something as dense. And so, and then on top of that, there's the possibility that more is added. And this is all without a legislative review. So that leaves people watching and wondering, even more confused about, you know, how they can learn about what could happen around them. So I guess I just wanted to put that out there. And then the other thing I'd add really quick, and I figured Karen might add something about this too, and I do appreciate the cleanup part. But sometimes when I think about, and maybe this is more of a comment for moving forward into the next phases, but when we talk about street trees, and I think this is what it's saying here, is you wouldn't get a bonus for that because we're already asking for that elsewhere. But then it makes me think deeper into that could there be bonuses, or maybe there already are, for leaving mature trees, or when we say street trees, that we're more clear with the appropriate type of trees, or you know, what that's going to look like in the end after a ton of mature trees have been removed and sometimes could have been avoided. So I wonder if we do incentivize that now, or if we don't, is that something we would consider moving forward?
Absolutely. I'm going to keep a running list of all of the things that we're looking at for the bonuses when we're moving forward. That's definitely something we'll be revisiting. And hopefully in the next CTA that talks about bonus densities, we can look at more in-depth things to incentivize, like keeping mature trees, maybe like stormwater management, retention ponds, the kinds of things that you wouldn't necessarily automatically put in, but that we do want to incentivize. So that's just for the whole commission. Anything that you want to talk about that we're talking about moving forward in the next stage, we'll just keep a running list of that and take that right now. But yeah, that is something we would look at in the next stage.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Rick? Karen, you're after Tim.
Okay.
Rick?
Lee, I think the staff comment section I thought was terrific. Very well done. Having each one of those Roman numerals there. I want to focus in on Roman numeral 5, which is page 3 of the staff report summary. And not so much the point, but you elucidate below the point regarding demand for future land development may impose pressures on sloped land that will be incompatible with the stream health performance design standards of the ZTA. So I'm concerned that the generalist can read this and basically say, what's proposed here, it will weaken the water protection ordinance of the county. I don't think that's what you're saying, but you're leaving it open to interpretation that at least in terms of managed slopes, that what you're proposing here is going to trump the water protection ordinance, and it could lead to negative implications for stream health, which is not something any of us want to see moving forward. So could you just comment about that? Because I was really concerned about that paragraph.
Sure. I think that what we're looking at here is just in general, anytime we are incentivizing additional development, it can cause implications for sensitive land. And that's something that we need to admit, that anytime we're looking at development, that is a fact, that is something that can happen. But that doesn't overwhelm the positives of incentivizing any other development that is focused in the development areas. It's focused in opportunity areas. We're trying to avoid, we're trying to minimize the amount of impacts we'll have on sensitive lands by keeping them in the development area instead of having it spread throughout the county. So that's something where it could theoretically impose pressure on sensitive land. But that's not something that we think is a large enough impact to cause staff to not recommend this.
Well, the only problem is when you look at sloped land and you go ahead and put 1,000 cuts into it, very quickly the sloped land dies. You may not be putting major earth moving equipment and wholesale changing, but a cut here, a cut there can really affect the way a stream watershed operates. But anyhow, thank you for explaining that, and that answers my question. Appreciate it.
Tim?
Well, as with the others, it's just always great when you come and you give us these cleaned up versions. We very much appreciate the thought that goes into them in the organizational framework. I want to just ask a question that this is most likely not you, this is most likely a consensus. And I rather wish that Charles was here this evening, but in the paragraph under background, the second paragraph that talks about the changes since 1985, and it says, even in the development areas, to goals related to walkability, more urban development forms in the development area, and an emphasis on affordable housing, and moving away from an emphasis on the preservation of open space. But I guess I'm concerned with the wording of that, not actually the product that you've produced. But it seems to me that both in Pantops, where there has been a real move by the public through the public engagement portion, and in Crozet as well, the discussions that we're having about the importance of parks and open space. And if we're not going to get parks and open space through bonuses, through proffers or something through the bonus process, then it seems to me that the county is going to have to ante up and purchase properties. And we saw an example of this on 29 North as well, in thinking about setting up those blocks and how it would have been really helpful to have the county own something that the kind of super lot blocks could be built around. So again, I think that this is not to upset this process. I'm not offering it for that, but I'm offering it for your internal staff discussion to think a bit more about what you're saying here, because I think that these are two things that need to be working together in tandem. We need to figure out how we're going to have open spaces so that the walkability actually it benefits from being able to walk from an open space to another open space. Even if some of those are public and we get to that through form-based code. Anyway, that's really my bigger one. And then maybe after other folks have spoken, I wonder if you could go into that portion about the trailer parks and how the bonuses would be given, and give us a little background. Is that coming from the Southwood experience or also from the trailer park up to the north as well? What has led you all to believe that that is a good way to approach that? But overall, I am quite positive and supportive of what you've done. Thank you very much.
Julian, do you mind if I address that right now? It's very quick, actually.
Actually, that's okay. Keep go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, so Mr. Keller, that change, there's no change there. That regulation is the same as it was before. We haven't analyzed that. That's something that we would be looking at under the future incentives incorporation. So that the manufactured home regulations for affordable housing, that is just copied straight from the existing regulations and moved into section 4. So.
Okay. Is that okay, Tim? Karen?
Yes, I was just going to briefly tag on to what Commissioner Moore said a moment ago about the trees. Yeah, I have brought up the need to have more robust or any standards for tree planting, both sizing of the wells, species diversity, size of treed islands, types of trees that are appropriate for sidewalks and parking lots versus parks. So I've been told by Mr. Rapp that that is all to be considered as part of this work to update the zoning ordinance. So I didn't make any comments about, you know, bonus densities for things that I think we should require, as other cities do. So we're a rural county turning into an urbanizing county. We're urbanizing around Charlottesville. Crozet is a smaller town, becoming a little bit more like a city. We don't have the same powers as a city, but nevertheless, as we develop these urban areas, we do have to start adopting some of the standards that you would find in a well-run city for our green spaces. And then a bonus that, though, that you might consider, but let me also say, I like the idea of you know, considering some bonus densities for leaving mature trees on site, because they provide a lot more value. But low impact development or constructed green infrastructure, as we've talked about in the past on this dais, the virtual dais, the stormwater regulations were changed several years ago to allow developers to buy off-site credits for water quality treatment. And as a result, we saw a decline in the amount of water quality treatment being provided on site. And we're only getting volume controls, leaving water quality to be provided somewhere else. So it's sort of become a transaction rather than an actual prevention of water pollution. And so at least on the sites that we care about. So I really detest that change. That was not what the Stormwater Committee originally was trying to put in place. That was convened to craft that regulation at the state level. So we may need to incentivize back something that we've lost the ability to require. And then there are other things in terms of parks and green space, but I don't think I want to have a long conversation on that tonight. But I also kind of raised my eyebrow when I read that section about, you know, less open space, because you can have density and open space at the same time. It's absolutely possible. And there's a lot of great design examples of that. And I don't want to bore everyone tonight. So I'll just leave it at that for another time. But again, I've been assured by Mr. Rapp that there would be a time for actually strengthening our tree ordinance, or not assuming he's strengthening, creating a robust tree ordinance, improving our landscaping standards, so that when we have a developer who is putting street trees in, that they actually don't die within several years. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Daniel, Corey, and Luis. So Daniel, Corey, and Luis.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I think since you're saying, you know, this is really great to clean up, since you're saying you're taking a running note, kind of piggybacking on what was said. One thing that isn't mentioned here is potential bonus densities for those green building standards, renewables on the site. You know, when we talk about having mature trees, as we think about it, and the goal of trying to offset greenhouse gases globally in our park, and that, you know, leaving mature trees has much more economic or value from a carbon sink perspective than, you know, a freshly planted tree. And so I'm totally behind that. But the other part that I think would be interesting is while green building materials are coming down in price, they're still often considered a little bit higher in price. And so, you know, if there was a way to think about adding that as a bonus density factor for, you know, certified, that could be an interesting way to create a you know, housing that is also doing its part not to contribute to air pollution, both in this area and others, as we're modernizing our electrical consumption as a state, as a country, really. I think the other thing that I just wanted to hit on that is not really related, it's just more of bringing up a previous conversation that was kind of put on the backlog, but I appreciate adjusting the VR minimum for handling the affordable housing density from 5 years, 10 years being consistency. But I think that also brings up another, thing as we move into the next phase is what do our villages look like? Is that the place of employment? Because the thing that we hit into with the last time we were thinking about these bonus density factors was public transit. And can we get people to places of employment and affordable housing? And does that make sense? I'm not taking a stance on it or trying to say, but I think that's a thing for us to be thinking about and understanding what that means as a bonus factor for the villages and what the view of it is there. So something to think about as we move into the next phase of assessing what is bonus density and what does it mean. And that's all my comments.
Corey?
Commissioner Bailey has stole all my thunder, so I'll get right to it. For future exploration, I want better buildings. Is there a way that we can use this as a tool to get net zero buildings or net zero ready buildings, right? To push the envelope a little bit. Since once we inherit these designs that are constructed, they're here for 50 years or more. So I'll leave it there. I want better buildings. And is there a way that we can use this as a tool, if appropriate, to encourage that? So thank you.
Okay. Louise?
Well, for the sake of being repetitive, because I was headed in the same line of thought, if we're giving more density, we're having a larger footprint on that site. Is there ways that we can incentivize more sustainable design? I think both my colleagues have spoke about that very well. So I'll just give an example. At times we've asked for impervious or pervious pavers and just simple things that can help a site, whether it's just water quality or building materials, as we mentioned. So if there's some way of, if we're going to have a larger footprint on a site, is there a way that we can incentivize the use of some technologies or materials that will help to minimize our overall footprint?
So I would yes, Karen.
Just really briefly, I also wanted to remind the commission and staff that when we were doing the RIO form-based code, there was supposed to be work done on green infrastructure incentives. And then as form-based code moved forward, a lot of the incentives went away for various reasons. One was that the consultants who were advising the county didn't think that incentives worked very well. But nevertheless, wherever you come down on that issue, the staff has not, and this is not a criticism of the staff, just that I have been waiting and expecting these sort of green infrastructure incentives, whether they're buildings or constructed things such as bioswales or permeable pavement to be enumerated, and that work has not occurred. So I don't know if that work is still to be done or if it just got dropped. So that was supposed to be something that was happening. I'll just put that out there, and maybe when Charles comes back, he can elaborate on what went on with that, or what if anything can we expect more on that, or maybe nothing.
Okay. So I just have a few sort of add-on comments. One, I was just sort of as an editorial piece on page 3 of the revised documents of the ordinance, section 2.4.5. You have an asterisk down the bottom, but I don't see the complementary asterisk in the table. And I didn't know if it was just a carryover from above, or there really isn't supposed to be an asterisk there. Page 3 on section 2.4.5A, affordable housing bonus factors apply to the following zoning districts.
Yeah, the asterisk would have been on both of those standards. I think that was just a typo.
So
And,
just on the right-hand side, on the one that says if at least 30% of the number of units.
yeah.
Okay, so you'll have that on. Okay. So I too want to, I'm really pleased that the ability, sort of the plain speak of where we seem to be moving. That's a big deal for me. I mean, I grew up under a training where it was sort of drilled into you to move away from all of these precious terminology to move to something that a person could pick up and they could read it and understand and move and sort of make decisions about. So I'm very pleased about that. I also need to say, as the person who represents the place with the most density, that one of the things that I was concerned about was the same paragraph that Tim did about this whole idea, the emphasis on the preservation of open space. In the Jewett district, we have one, I can't call it a pocket park, but we have one sort of green space that probably has a future of being this sort of semi-wild space. And that's the Charlotte Humphreys Park, that there's going to be very little of any kind of change to that park. Maybe try to manage the water a little bit like that. And so basically for the people who live in the area of the community, of our community, with sort of the oldest infrastructure, some of the older or the first wave of density, we have very little green space. And in some of those neighborhoods, we have very little infrastructure, no sidewalks, no gutters, none of that one might one might anticipate seeing in our more rural villages, but you shouldn't expect to see it in something that's the highest density and sort of in the midst of the development. So what I'm going to doing is two things. So while we talk about what might get developed on land, I hope at some time we're also talking about what are the things that we can incentivize on developed land. What's the partnership that we can do between existing homes so that in fact we're building out this sort of walkable transit bicycle lane infrastructure across entities, as opposed to having it sort of in a hopscotch applied kind of way. That's something that I'd like us to, I don't know, I'm putting that out to you for your list, but that's concerning me because when I look at what's happening at Stonefield, and I'm a fan of Stonefield, so no one take it away, but we're looking at the kind of work, the infrastructure that they're doing there. You're seeing a whole sort of set of what I'd say, particularly if they don't do that in the other hotel, you're going to have green space and you're going to have people walking, living, and walking all in a space that makes perfectly good sense. You go one block away from it and the world changes completely. And so not having these islands of amenities is something I guess I'm hoping to not to do. The other thing that I think, and I want to be real clear with this, I am not throwing a stone, but I am asking, how do we have the things that my colleagues here have talked about, green buildings, smart buildings, different kind of styles, and have that line up with what has traditionally, what has felt to me as a traditional look at ARB standards coming in on our what do we call those roads? Karen, give me that road. Give me the name of that road. What are those roads? Not artillery.
Entrance corridors.
Thank you. Entrance corridors, on our entrance corridor, because most of this work is going to be done around entrance corridors. And so if we're going to do some of the work that you're speaking of, have kind of buildings that you're speaking about, that means there's going to be a different kind of exploration of what is the ARB going to say is the appropriate standard, visual standard for coming down those roads and having that kind of development. And so that's a piece that I know that's not what you're asking us for, but I'm trying to figure out how do we sort of lock all this together with these wonderful ideas, but yet we have a more conservative or traditional looking set of buildings that get built on our entrance corridors. You don't want to say anything to me on that one. She's just smiling and going, oh, okay, we're just going to go on from there. And so that the one piece was about the green space in the existing areas. Anybody? Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I'll just add that I would not assume, I know we're talking about density bonuses and poor Leah's trying to just get these edits for this.
So she can get on with it.
The planning commission is going off and remaster planning the urban ring, but to you, our chair, you know, there is a lot of work that can be done to retrofit already developed neighborhoods, as you know, to add sidewalks, to add bioswales, to deal with stormwater from untreated sites, to create pocket parks and amenities and walkabilities, and dare I say, even trails. I've done a lot of that work in different cities, and I'm sure Commissioner Keller and others on this call have done that work. So, we have a lot of expertise in that, and it might take more of a concerted effort to do, a master plan / retrofit plan. And there's funding to do that. So I don't mean in our county. I mean, we may have to.
Yeah, I understood. Yeah, we understood that. And I see Daniel smiling, so that's always a good sign.
I'm done.
Anyone else before we go to public? Madam Schaefer, is there anyone in the public who would like to speak?
No, sir, there sure isn't.
All right. Well, Ms. Broomfield, is there anything that you'd like to say to us before? Have you received what you needed from us before we move to your resolution, to your motion?
Yeah, we got a lot of really great thought for future work. And I do have a recommended motion with the addition of the asterisk that you pointed out that managed to get through multiple layers of proofreading. So let me pull that up.
It just goes down to the way I'm trained. That doesn't have anything to do with your really. Don't do that. It's okay. So you want to put that up for us? There you go. And
let me 1 sec. It's the next slide.
okay. I see it. We
There
see
you
it. All right. Commissioners, is there anyone? Tim, would you like to move that? Would you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, I move to recommend approval of ZTA 2021-03 bonus densities cleanup is shown in attachment C of the staff report with the change of adding the aforementioned asterisk on page 3 of the draft ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Karen. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Schaefer, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Claiborne,
Aye.
Ms. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Bivens,
Aye.
Mr. Randolph,
Aye.
Ms. Firehawk,
Aye.
Mr. Keller,
Aye.
Mr. Bailey.
Aye.
Thank you.
Ms. Broomfield, I think you also heard the aye from Rick's dog. So that's truly a vote of confidence. Thank you for bringing this to us, and thank you for sort of sitting through. My colleagues and I, we're often so focused on very detailed and very specific things that when you give us an opportunity to sort of like run a little while, we will take full use of that opportunity. And so thank you for your patience and thank you for your good work. It's always a pleasure to have you come before us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bivens, and thank you to the entire commission this evening.
Thank you. So we'll be moving on, and I think you have what you need from us too. Okay. Are you still managing our meeting?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Are there committee reports? No committee reports. Okay. Is there any old or new business? I'm seeing heads moving. No old or new business. Do we have items for follow-up? Oh, well, I think one of the things it might be helpful to sort of take back to Charles, that it might be good to give us an opportunity to just do what we did with you with him, where we can say, these are the things that we've talked about. These are the things that we'd like to figure out a way to have some time to chew into or chew on. You don't chew into things. Oh, you get chewed into, but you chew on things. Don't pay any attention to me. If you would take that message to him, I'd appreciate it. So we have now. Oh, look at that. Look at everybody look at your clock real quick. It's going to be the last time it's like that forever. Our October 12th meeting. So next week we were scheduled for a work session. We don't have anything that's coming before us. So our next planning commission meeting will be scheduled for Tuesday, October the 19th, this year, 2021. Okay. Folks, it is 6:45. It is still light out. Go, oh, and we got a note here. Thank you, Bart. Go forth and do good things, and see you in a couple of weeks. Huh? Bye-bye now. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. Cool.